So this is a lightning round. I'm going to ask you.
I'm horrible at this stuff.
Oh, you'll do fine. First question: if you had a personal robot, which task would you have it perform the most?
Household chores.
Okay, that's fair.
Cut the grass.
What instructional YouTube video would you be famous for?
I don't know that I would be famous for anything on a YouTube video. That would be a tough one.
What animal would you choose if you could transform into it for one day?
Maybe a lion.
Oh, yeah? If you could be anyone's twin for one day, who would you choose?
Elon Musk.
Nice. Which movie would you like to see unlimited sequels of?
Maybe Caddyshack, I guess. That's what comes to mind.
Well, that seems like an easy one you could make unlimited sequels of, right? What's the number one thing that you wish you knew before you started any of your automotive businesses?
I wish I would have known a little bit more on structure, on organizational structure and setting up even corporate structure, looking at
the legal entity,
the legal entities and stuff. Like, we have the right legal entities. They're all just separate, and we're just rolling them up into a holding company, really is what we're doing now. But there's just paperwork, a ton of paperwork that we've got to do to make that happen. And so I wish I would have known a little bit more about that. But there's so many things that I tell people starting out that you don't know in business, but man, just go ask, because most business owners are more than happy
generous
to share and generous
with
with information. And I love talking to people that are, starting businesses or have questions. And it's like, no, I don't have all the right answers. I can tell you the mistakes I've made, and I've made plenty of them. I always just tell people I've made plenty of them. Fortunately, none of them's ever cost me my business.
Sure.
Have they cost me money? Yes.
Well, that's just buying your education.
Well, it's stupid tax, I guess, as Dave Ramsey calls it.
That's what? Stupid tax.
Yeah,
ignorant tax.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know, right? So,
but we didn't have what we have today. And like, we don't, today I say you can learn anything you want to learn pretty easy today with the tools and the technologies out there, the videos that's out there. You can learn a lot. And we didn't have that back then.
Right. What is the biggest mistake that you've made?
Structure of company, corporate structure.
Okay.
Probably the biggest.
Really? The biggest mistake?
Well, I mean, that's the one that just comes to mind, I guess, because that's at the forefront right now of what we're doing, and just
probably the length of time it's taken.
The length of time it's taken, the amount of money it's costing, and then I just tell my partners that it's just frustrating. I don't want to work that hard anymore. I've been grinding since I was in my 30s.
Yeah. And
I don't want to work that hard anymore. And this has just been a very, I would say, a frustrating year because we're doing so much stuff. We opened that shop, and I'm over there painting on the weekends and doing stuff on the weekends because it's all about bootstrapping. And I don't, either I can't get somebody to come in there when I need them to come in there, when, where we don't have to close a facility down. And, trying to get guys to do work on a weekend or something like that, well, that's difficult. And I'm very protective of our, my teammates' time. I don't want guys work on a weekend. I want them to enjoy their family. I want, them to spend time away and stuff. And so a lot of times I'll go.
That's interesting. You don't mind that cost to yourself, though.
Correct. Because I always just figure, well, I'll just take a day off during the week.
Sure.
Which a lot of times I don't.
Yeah.
So I've gotten better. I started tracking, I did it years ago, started tracking my time of how much I'm spending on, the various entities and what I'm doing, and just really tracking to see how much time am I really spending in that business versus how much am I spending at the bank, how much time am I spending at the utility, how much time am I spending on the home building business. And
then when you say utility, you serve on 4 different boards, right? Currently, you're on 4 different. You got the GVEC, the Economic Development Corporation, Guadalupe Valley Home Services, and then the Shirts and
Bank.
And then you've got 3 stores. I mean, I imagine time blocking could be a full-time job for somebody.
Yeah, and I'm not real good. I've done a better job of really looking at my calendar and stuff and trying not to overcommit to doing stuff, because it just, and in the last year I just said, I'm just tired because it's like I have stuff every night.
Yeah.
And you're working all day, and then you got stuff at night, and I have lots of projects that I want to do in cars and building and stuff. I'm like, I don't have time to work on that stuff.
Yeah. What's the best advice you ever gotten? Don't tell me it was structuring your company.
Well, actually, it does go back to that somewhat. Because I just remember this, is my dad, when I bought my last house 20-some years ago, when I bought it, we'd built a house, shirts, and I was putting in a sprinkler system. And I was talking to my dad about starting this business up and was looking at partners. And he said, you don't need a partner. You're smart enough. You don't need a partner. Don't do it. My dad's never been in business or anything. He was military, retired and stuff, and was always a admin type person and stuff. And it just never. I just remember that.
Okay.
And that was just advice he gave me. And I never had partners until 2017, and part of that was, maybe I really didn't structure it right at the time when I did it. But part of that was, John's worked for me for 17 years, 18 years. David's worked for me for probably almost 20 now. And those guys have just put their heart and soul in that business and worked that business very hard. And I always felt like I want them to be owners.
Yeah.
And so it was 2017. It said, we're building this new store. We're going to open it. We're going to create this new corporation. You guys are going to be owners in it. And so each of them have ownership in each of the shops. And it's made it difficult as we're trying to roll all those up into a holding company because there's different levels of ownership in each business.
Right.
And so, that's tough when you tell somebody, well, you own 20% of this, but you're only going to own 10% of this.
Yeah.
But then you're also going to own 10% of everything else we acquire or build.
Sure.
When we go on that. And so that's been a little bit, it's been a lot of a struggle trying to get that done. And then also trying to get it done and not having one of the shops set up under the right corporate structure for tax purposes. And so we're just not able to roll that in. We just have huge suspended loss in that company from when we started.
Okay.
And so, and we would lose that trying to roll it in. That's what the tax attorneys tell me. And that's what the CPAs tell me. I'm like, okay, well, then we're not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to give that up at this point.
Sure, yeah.
And so we'll just have to, so the process has taken much longer than what I anticipated. I felt like I could get all that stuff done last year and get that off my plate. It's probably going to be 2 more years.
Wow.
Before we're able to really get it to where it needs to be.
From the outside looking in, that's a good problem for you to have. I mean, you've got I would say a very high margin of success, and so working backwards to restructure, there's worse things.
Well, it's slow down to go faster later.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's
and that's probably been the biggest challenge because I'm like, I don't know how much more I really want. I mean, I do have I have an idea in my head of what I want to do and really mapping it out for teammates and stuff to really look at our whole build out of what positions do we need, what position, because we're all filling multiple roles.
Yeah.
And so it's really putting that out there to see, well, what kind of staff do we need to be able to grow to where I think we need to be, where my cutoff is.
Yeah.
And so that's been interesting, doing that and just really looking at it and then, then trying to put numbers behind it all to look at where we're going to go. So it just takes an incredible amount of time to do that. And nobody, as I say, people always see the fun stuff that I'm doing, in the events or whatever. They don't see the time that, I'm up at midnight, looking at, information and trying to come up with plans or
research,
or, can't sleep and wake up at 2 a.m. Like I might as well get up and, I'll go back to sleep later. And then of course never go back to sleep. And,
What's your favorite tool? What's your most favorite tool? And you can't say your smartphone, even though it is an Apple. What's your favorite tool for running your business or for anything?
I don't know. Probably one of my favorite things is podcasts.
Really?
Oh yeah. Without a doubt.
Okay.
My number one podcast is Entree Leadership. Dave Ramsey's podcast is
I got that. I listened. I don't listen to it as much as I'd like to, but I remember asking him. I remember getting that tip from you. Entre Leadership.
And now, it's, I love racing.
Yeah.
I love, car racing, any type of car racing, drag racing or anything. So, my latest one is all the Dirty Mo media stuff. They produce stuff every day for races and talk about the race the last weekend. That and Flow Sports to watch races from all over the country at any time.
Okay. So you go to the Salt Flats, right?
Yeah.
That's an every year thing for you?
Every year.
So what goes on out there?
Land speed records.
Land speed records?
Yeah, fast stuff.
You have got to be involved in some of, I don't know how it works, but I see you're involved in some of them.
I've been working on a car for a couple of years. The car wasn't there last year. It won't be there this year. They just made modifications to it. I just work on it when it's at the track. Not involved in building or anything like that. But, we're trying to run the record in that particular class we're running is a streamliner class. And the record in that class is 367 miles an hour. And so we've run 365. We've never had a good clean run. It's all incremental changes. It's a lot of programming and stuff and fuel systems. And so, but the guy that has the record has ran a 409, but he didn't get to back it up because it rained the next day. And then the last 2 years, his car's broke. Well, he's going to be back this year. Oh. And so it's just really interesting. A lot of smart people out there, a lot of technology out there.
Let me ask you real quick. So 409 miles an hour?
Yeah.
And then so in order for him to get that record, you got to do it twice? Is that how that works? You got to
run it twice.
Okay. So the unofficial record is 409.
And there's a lot of rules. And, so like if you ran that between mile 3 and 4, when you do, when you first run it, that's a qualifying run. Then you have to run the next morning. Your car goes out the next morning. It's impounded. And then you run again the next morning. Well, the only mile that counts is between mile 3 and 4. And then they average those two speeds together. So you could run. So say the record was 400, you ran a 410 that day. Well, then the next day you came back and you only ran a 395. You would still have the record because you'd be like 402 or something like that. And so, or you could say, well, I'm going to just keep that run. And that's going to be my qualifying run. And I'm going to run another run tomorrow. But it's just really interesting out there. There's classes out there that, they're running over 500 miles an hour in some of those cars. They have to be wheel driven. But there's motorcycles out there, little 50 cc's that the record may be 38 miles an hour in that class. And so you got guys building stuff to get 39 miles an hour or whatever.
That's awesome. What is that event called?
Speed Week.
Speed Week?
Yeah, Speed Week. It's the first Friday in August is when it starts, and it goes for a week.
Okay. Getting back to your businesses, the next 10 years, what do you see for?
Well, I won't be around.
What do you mean?
Well,
you'll have exited the business.
Yeah, we have a plan. I have a plan to exit the business and turn it over
within 10 years, 5 years.
Oh yeah, within 5 for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm not sure.
Hold on. What does exit mean to you?
I don't want to
completely.
I don't want to be involved in any. Well, I'm not really involved in day-to-day operations, but I still have risk.
Sure.
And I still deal with a lot of finance stuff. Is that I don't want to have to deal with any of it. I don't want to have to deal with any type of HR stuff. I don't want to have to deal with anything with the business. And really, that goal was 2.5 years from now.
Okay.
To do that is to turn everything over to the partners.
But you're still going to have ownership.
Yes, that wasn't the original plan, but it's looking like that's probably going to be the plan.
Okay.
And then I may stick around another 5 years on paper. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to, but there's a fear. I have this huge fear is that, will I get bored?
Oh.
I've got all these, right now the stress is I got these, first world problems of projects that I've, got a car building, got another car I'm working on, got a motorhome, that I'm working on. And that I would chew through these projects in 3 to 6 months and then be like, what do I do? So
that's, you think that's going to,
it's a fear.
I believe, I hear where you're coming from. I really do.
Because I've been grinding and just always have worked so much.
I feel like people like you, or in me to that matter, you're going to inject yourself in somewhere that's going to make you busy.
I still do. The utility, I could spend, there's some months I may spend 100 hours with them, doing work for them. Average is usually about 25, but there's just some months it's just heavy.
Sure.
And then, I still have stuff at the bank every week that I deal with. And I don't know. I think like this year was tough because I usually do mission work in out of the country. I've gone to Dominican Usually go twice a year.
You were doing that every year up until COVID, right?
I did it during COVID. I went last year in January, and then I got COVID while I was down there, so I had to stay. And then I didn't do anything. I had a trip planned this year, ended up having to cancel it, and had another trip, and then that ended up getting canceled. And so like this year, I haven't done any. Mm-hmm. And, I may do something late December, mm-hmm. but I definitely will do something next year. One year I went down, when I sold the collision shop, I went down there for a month.
How long was your typical stay?
A week.
A week?
Yeah.
What do you do when you're down there? It looked like you're building houses.
Build houses.
Yeah.
Work hard. Work hard, sweat. What I learned is always go in the summer. And then I started going in January, February, and March. And I'm like, I ain't never going back in the summer. It's just way too hot.
So so during the winter months though, what is it like? What's the temperature down there?
90.
What is it during the summer?
100.
Oh, there's a 10-degree difference between the winter and the summer?
It's humid, man.
Oh.
It is just hot. But I love doing the work.
What does success look like to you?
I think the number one thing for me is family, is having a well-knit family, investing in the community, mm-hmm. being able to invest in the community, invest in others and stuff. It's definitely not money or things that, people tend to connect with success. It's just really about, having a life that, you have a good relationship with your family, with your parents, friends.
The older I get, the less money plays any kind of role in my decision making, but definitely my idea of success. You know what I mean? Whenever I first started when I started my first business, I quit my job business, right? I've always had some kind of side deal. But my first, and my still to this day, my bread and butter making business, it was, the big building, name on the side of it. I'm going to, everybody's going to know, you know what I mean? And the more years that go by, the more that has just faded. Right. It's like my why now is so different than my why when I started.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, when I look back, and I think the thing that I'm probably most proud of is I never missed anything my kids did at school or extracurricular activities. I was always able to be there. Mm-hmm. And so you don't realize how important that is for them. And, when I was growing up, we were, I wouldn't say, I guess maybe we were poor. We just didn't know it because we had what we needed. And, my dad was enlisted in the military. And, I think one of the greatest gifts my parents gave to me is they've stayed married for over 50 years. And, to this day, I've never heard my parents argue.
Really?
And even growing up in front of us or anything, never really argued, and so, and my wife and I are the same way. We just don't, especially like the kids, around or something. If we disagreed on something, we probably to a detriment is we're both so easygoing is that we just blow stuff off. Yeah. Not worried about it. I'd always like, nah, she's mad. She'll get over it at some point. I'm not going nowhere. She's not going nowhere. And, that wasn't the healthiest thing to do. So I was told by a counselor and that we need to have some fights every once in a while. And, but yeah, it was just, and then when my son, graduated from college and stuff, so we got to follow him. He, he's very fortunate, got to play football for Steele, got a full ride playing college ball and stuff. And so we got to follow him doing that. And he said, the one thing, Dad, I can say is I always thought was cool is no matter where I played, I could always look in the stands and you were there.
Wow.
And I missed one game in 10 years and it crushed me. Yeah. And I had to tell him before, like, I just can't get out of this.
Right.
I've got to be there and I'm going to miss this game. I'm so sorry. I apologize. And then I used to send him a text before every game, just some kind of motivational, could be scripture, could be something, a story or whatever. And I didn't think it was that important. So one time, just like, I don't have time to do that. And after that, he's like, Dad, you didn't send me my text. I'm like, yeah. He goes, I was waiting for it. because I share it with the guys on the team.
Wow.
And I'm like, I didn't realize it was that important, but that won't happen again. And so I went and just made this whole string of, I'm going to get ahead of the game. I'm going to make all these. So I just got to pick one. I'm got to think of it on the fly or whatever. Because most of the stuff I just thought of on the fly and stuff. And I'm like, I won't miss another one, you know? And so that was fun. And I always just feel like, hey, I was just so fortunate that I was able to do that. I mean, when he's 7th and 8th grade and their games are at 4:00 way on the other side of town, and it's like, man, I got to leave work.
Yeah.
You know, that's hard. I got to leave work. But the thing that I did also is like, I am so grateful that I get to be here. You know, one of 10 parents for all these kids. I get to be here. And you know what? Anybody that ever works for me, they're going to have the ability to take off if their kids are doing something. We're not doctors. There's nobody's going to die on the operating table. We can schedule it. If you know you have an event, just tell us and don't miss it, because this is just a season in your life. And it's a short season. And it's about making memories. And so you take off and you just don't miss those events, because they're going to be gone before you know it.
That's awesome that you have that environment in your companies with your employees, because that's
we don't call them employees. We have teammates.
Teammates. That's fair. That's good.
So we call them teammates.
That's a good way to say that. So what's the biggest goal that you have for your companies, your automotive businesses? What's the biggest goal that you have for them?
Well, I think right now the goal is to add 2 more locations.
Okay.
Why get to a level of sales that...
Why is it 2?
I might have 2 areas that I just want to be in.
Okay, fair enough.
And I have dirt for 1.
Okay.
So, you know, that I'll probably start working on that pretty soon.
Okay.
So, but it's a matter of, we've got to hit certain metrics, and that's what staff has to understand, is that, hey, this is the goal, because that's what they're on me about, is that, hey, what is, you know, because I've vocalized what, you know, what the goals are to a couple people, not everybody, but everybody needs to know, hey, these are the goals. This is where we're going, and really do a better job of casting the vision of what we want to do and what opportunities are out there for, you know, the teammates that are working for us now. And so really trying to map that out right now. I think I have it mapped out. I sent it to John, said, hey, I've got this mapped out. Let's start shooting holes in it. Let's present it to staff, and let's start shooting holes in it and what we're going to do. And then, you know, I'll give them the metrics of what we have to hit in order for us to start on a location or build a location. These are the things that we're going to have in place before we do this, and just have a better plan for doing it. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now, is really looking at that, and then looking at that, you know, the succession planning for our teammates. And I have it in my mind of who's going to be in what positions, but some positions I don't have, that's what they're going to have to work on, is what is the succession plan? Because we just tell everybody, you got to work yourself out of a job.
Yes.
Who's your replacement? You know, and just really have some good backup. And we just have an incredible team that.
I probably would go on a limb here and say that's not by accident.
Well, it's definitely, I would love to take credit for it, but it's definitely not me. It's definitely John and Edgar and David have done a great job of instilling the culture and managing that culture and protecting that culture. They've just done. I'm just not there.
Right,
you know,
right.
And
protecting that culture. I think that's a terrific way to say that. I mean, if you can establish something and then have to protect, that's. Some
of the people don't even know who I am that work for us, you know, and I have to look at. I had to do some stuff the other day, and I'm like, I don't even know who this person is, and I'm looking at, you know, they had to send me pictures of everybody and for some stuff we're working on, and I'm like, who? I don't even know who this person is, and stuff. And so, but what's interesting is that, so I'm the face of the company to the community and to the industry, and John and Edgar are the face of the company to the teammates. And, you know, that's just the rule. Like, they don't get a lot of credit a lot of times for the work that they do. I get the credit, but it's, you know, I'm not deserving of the credit they are, really. I'm just happen to be the face. I happen to be the guy that's out there at all the events, you know, and I tell them, hey, I don't want to go to all these events all the time. You guys need to start getting out. But by the same token, I'm very protective of their time.
Sure.
Because they all got kids.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, I don't want you going to do this. You know, I'm not going to tell you need to go do this. You got kids at home.
Mm-hmm.
That is your job. That is your number one job.
Yeah.
Is to take care of your family. And so, you know, that's going to change over time. You know, I've got, John's got one son going to college and he's got a daughter that's going to be I believe a junior maybe. And so, his time's freeing up a little bit more, and he can be a workaholic and very detailed guy to his own detriment.
Sure.
But he's a guy I can hand stuff off to. He's really the integrator. I'm the visionary. So I don't know if you've ever read Rocket Fuel.
It's on the list. You showed me that there.
Yeah,
he
really is. He really is the integrator. Just does a fantastic job and thinks of stuff that I don't think about. I just have the big idea. This is what we want to do. This is where we want to go. And he makes it happen.
What do you have any other businesses outside of the automotive?
I have a software company that we don't really work at it very hard. It's me and another guy, and we've got several customers, but we're just kind of living off residual income from it. But we don't make a bunch of money from it just because we don't have anybody out there pushing the product for us. It's in the automotive used car, new car business for dealerships and stuff. It's a product that, we tell them don't put a price on a car, because you got people window shopping all the time at night.
Right.
We have a QR code with a system behind it that they just get a QR code. It gives them the price of the car, all the specs on the car, pictures. And then on the back end, it provides the dealer with a lead list of this person, because we can produce off that phone number, we can produce a name and, what car they're looking at, what time they're looking at it, what type of car they're looking at. Have they looked at any other cars anywhere else? We have that product out there. We also, we actually had it out there in the real estate business too, but we just haven't focused on it just because he's busy. Mm-hmm. He's very busy now. He's got a new role in where he's working, and I literally just don't have the time to go out there and really push it. So we're really just have these customers that we've had for several years. Mm-hmm. And, so I do the accounting work for that company, and it's not a lot. And then, I have another friend that I partner with building houses. I don't have any houses on the ground right now, just because I was a little hesitant because of interest and stuff. And, the houses we were building were, $600,000. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm probably going to, I had 3 on the ground time, said I'm probably going to sell those. I'm probably going to take a little bit of a break to do stuff. And so that's normally what I would do on Fridays is walk the houses.
Oh, okay.
And then I have some real estate stuff. Trying to think. That's really about it.
That's it. When did you start serving? Because you've been on several boards since I've known you. But when did you start serving on boards, and how did you get into that? I think
I've served on a couple of different types of boards for nonprofits and stuff, and then I sat on the Economic Development Commission or Corporation. I sat on that board for the city of Schertz for a number of years, and then through that, and then through relationships with Louis Borgfeld at Schertz Bank, he's been my banker since day one, and I've been in business and stuff. And so he put me up for a board position on the utility to fulfill a spot of somebody that had deceased. And I turned him down several times, said no, because I just got off economic development with the city, and I'm like, I'm just trying to free up some time. Mm-hmm. And he just wouldn't take no. Just kept coming back. I kept telling him no. Hey, let's go to lunch. And I'm like, okay. And I finally agreed. It was just really to fulfill a term, 18-month term, mm-hmm. to finish out. He goes, hey, come do it. The only reason I'm presenting this to you because I think it'd be beneficial for you. You're sharp. You understand business. And I think it would be good for you. And I'm like, okay. So I finally agreed to do it. So at the end of 18 months, if you don't want to run, then don't. Mm-hmm. But I think you're going to find that it's beneficial and educational for you. So I did that. Well, that was 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I did that. And then I've got asked to be on, boards with the chamber. And then I was approached by the bank mm-hmm. to get on their board. And that was through Lewis. And a lot of that was because of my involvement with the utility and the stuff that we were working on with the utility and stuff. that they felt that would be beneficial at the bank. And so I got approached, from Roy Richard, came and visited me, and he says, "Hey, we can go to lunch." I'm like, he's going to call one of my notes or something. And then, of course, he's there with Jim Wolverton. I'm like, okay, they're either going to beat me up or there's something. We ain't just
Something's up.
We're not just having lunch. And then so I agreed to do that. That has been and part of the reason for me agreeing to do it is I really wanted to understand banking. I wanted to understand risk management. I wanted to understand what does a bank look at because I knew I wanted to grow and I knew I was going to need money to do it.
Sure.
And so, how does all this really, really work? I never had trouble getting money before, but I know that what we wanted to do, I was going to need a lot
Big
more money.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm going to do this to have a better understanding of it and learn more about it. And so I've learned a great deal doing it just because, every week I sit on a loan committee. So they're mainly a commercial bank. And so I look at business plans, I look at financial statements, I look at P&L statements, income statements, look at structure, how people have businesses structured and stuff, and have just learned a tremendous amount through that. And then look at, how does the SBA look at stuff?
Yeah.
What's good and what's a good rate? What are good rates? And am I getting good rates? And but I bank really at two different banks too. I bank with John Torres at First United. And I always felt like there's only two guys I would ever do business with, and that's John Torres and Louis Borgfield. Both of those guys have survived the test of time, survived banking, have been in this area for, years.
Yeah.
And, I've got approached by all kinds of bankers.
Sure. And imagine.
And then, you go to them a year later, want to talk to them about something just to kind of feel them out. Well, they're gone.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, no, they're gone. They quit or got transferred or whatever. And I'm like, John's always been here and Louis has always been here.
Well, and especially with something as important as banking, right? People want to do business with people.
Right.
So
that's what I really learned. There was a lot of relationship value in banking. And when you're looking at stuff and looking at people, that it's a lot of it is relationships that you don't get that in a big bank.
Yeah. Well, or like a credit union, right?
Yeah. That's
one of those things that has changed with me over the years is like, whenever I was first, right out of high school, I got an account at Randolph Brooks Federal Credit Union. And, it's just like, anytime I've ever needed anything, nobody's known who I am.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I don't want to be the entitled, hey, I'm the guy that comes in here. I got $52 in my bank. You need to give me a $10,000 loan. But I mean, it's there's got to be a happy medium. You know what I mean? So like, I've went from credit unions to banks and then, so it's just, it's funny how that progresses, how that changes throughout.
Well, it's still the same. If you don't need the money, they'll give it to you. If you need it, they won't give it to you.
Well, that's so.
that's kind of that's always the joke that goes around.
Yeah, but it also though, right? So I think that kind of plays in hand with, whenever you need something, you're going to pay the most for it, and when you don't need it is when you're going to get a deal on it,
right?
And it's all. I was just having this conversation with my nephew. My nephew's killing it right now. He's I don't know how many businesses he has, but one of them is a spray foam business. And so he says, he calls me the other day. He says, Uncle Jason, he goes, I have to have he goes, we're so busy with the hydromulch business. He says, the spray foam business. He says, I'm losing this much money a day in chemicals because it's so hot and I don't have a place to store it that's proper. He goes, I need a building on the ground yesterday. I was like, well, write your checkbook because if you need it now, you're going to pay the most for it. I'm very fortunate with my main business is that we don't have a lot of a need for equipment that I can't just go out and buy. You know what I mean? Most of the stuff that we do is computer related. So it's just, a really high power horsepower computer isn't going to break the bank and it's not, you know what I mean? My printing business, on the other hand, we went ass deep in equipment with that place. And,
I don't know. You got quite a bit of equipment here.
Oh, this is a hobby on crack. But with the printing business, we went, so he was graduating high school. My son was graduating high school. And then, the first batch of equipment, I've always had machines that printed blueprints. You know what I mean? That plays into my main business. But whenever we decided to expand the printing business into doing banners and everything else, I was like, all right. So I went to go talk to a couple of guys with equipment. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to buy this printer that prints all this stuff, right? And then so the salesman was telling me, he's like, dude, there's a smaller list of things you can't do on this machine. And there's, because I was like, what all can you do on it, right? He's like, the list is shorter on stuff you can't do. And then so I was like, all right, let's do it. And I was late for a meeting. I was like, and then he had the whole, and I was like, dude, I'm sold. I'm whatever, right? So he goes, as I'm walking out the door, he's like, well, that's just the printer. And I was like, right, yeah, that's what he goes, well, but you need a laminator and you need a cutter too. And I was like, hold on, what? You know what I mean?
Well, get that coming too, right?
Yeah, right. So anyways, that was, my business was doing really well. And so, we just absorbed that. Right. And then we got into another space, and then we started getting more equipment. And then that guy was telling me, he's like, well, we have financing options. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, what are they? And then so we went that route, and it was expensive, and then so it was like really expensive. So I paid all that down. And then I was like, and then we ended up selling a big part of that business. But anyways, it's like that barrier was broken in the universe. And then now I got people, they call me all the time. They're like, take our money. I'm like, I don't need your damn money. Jesus. I mean, everybody wants money, but I don't need your money, Jesus. So yeah, that's, I would say is right in line with when you don't need it, they'll give it to you. What's the future of your industry, do you think? I mean, with all the electric cars and then all
the ICE motor's not going to go away anytime soon.
Unless you're in California.
They're still going to be around. They're just not going to be selling any new ones. So not everybody's going to be able to afford an electric car, but they have service needs just like any other car. Maybe not near as much. I mean, we're servicing Teslas now. And there's issues with Teslas. I mean, there's coolant issues with Tesla. Coolant, yeah. Well, they use coolant to cool the batteries. They use coolant to cool the motor still. They use coolant. They've got heat pumps in them for air conditioning, so they have air conditioning issues and stuff. They don't have a lot of issues with those cars, but they still have issues with those cars. Sure. And obviously they'll get better. And, that's just one manufacturer. You've got all these other manufacturers are going to have electric cars too. They don't have the service facilities to service all the vehicles. And, not everybody's going to go out and buy an electric car. Right. And, there's just some places that, they're just not feasible. I think for most, like around here, they're not a bad deal, because if you've got a charger at home, then you're starting a day with a full tank every day. And are you going to drive 300 miles in a day around town? Probably not. Yeah. But then, obviously the flip side of that of being on the utility side is like, hey, we can't have everybody go out and buy an electric car because it'd decimate the grid, because we already have, have heat issues and events.
The grid is very fragile.
It is very fragile.
ERCOT's world.
Yeah. So. Well, it's very fragile everywhere. When you start talking, electric cars could decimate a grid pretty easy. And so there's some stuff out there that you have to look at that, look at what Canada's doing in some areas with charging electric cars and scheduling and stuff.
They schedule
when you charge it. And it's a matter you opt in for a program. They'll put a charger at your house, and then you say you come home at 5:00 and you plug it in and you say, look, I don't need this car till 7 a.m. And then they'll schedule when that car charges
between this block of time,
and stuff. And, at a different rate, because, electricity is pretty cheap at night now. That's when it's the cheapest.
Damn Canadians.
But that's all over. I mean, even in Texas, electricity's cheapest at night.
Right. Well, and then so there's like the wind farms and the big solar farms, you can't store that energy.
Correct.
And the things that you are hearing about now is how you can store that. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of really interesting trains of thought on that. You know what I mean? Like, there's some people, not some people, but there's some ideas, like as basic as using the electricity that you get from the sun to move a train uphill, right? and then at night you release it, and it's, you know what I mean. So that's you don't think of storing energy but that's exactly what you're doing.
But the same thing with water,
right?
They'll let water run and generate electricity, and then at night when electricity is cheap, they'll pump it back up,
right,
and recirculate it. So yeah, there's a number of battery storage projects out there. That the first one they did was in Presidio. Actually, they built a big. I mean, it's just this huge facility. It's just nothing but, it wasn't lithium batteries. It was just old battery technology, because Presidio had what we call a radial line. So it had one feed into that area, where most places have dual feed. So if one goes down, you backfeed from the other circuit. Well, they didn't have that, and they would lose power every day through that radial feed. And so I think it was AEP, did this project out there and used it to store electricity for when they would lose that feed. Mm-hmm. And so there was some money that's got approved for more of those projects to be able to store electricity. What people don't understand is when you talking about like wind farms and solar, and they're great and they produce a lot when the wind's blowing and when the sun's out and stuff. But for every one of those facilities that you have out there, you've got to have backup. You've got to have backup for it, and there's not been an incentive to build backup. And
because the way I understand it though is they can't like everybody's like, get rid of coal. It's right. Bad. It's bad for all these, for lack of a better word, tree huggers, right? But so yeah, you put up a wind farm, but when wind stops blowing and the sun stops shining, then you've got to have demand. You've got to have that demand met by something that is
correct.
Unfortunately,
it's not
mix. Renewable.
I always feel like it's a mix. It's the same way with cars. I feel like, hey, you need to have a mix. You can have all electric, you can have hybrid. I like a hybrid better than I like all electric. And then you can just have regular gas motors too. And that's a healthy mix. Well, the same thing comes for power supply too, that you really need, gas, nuclear, coal's still good. They just need to figure out a way to do it cleaner, yep. And then solar and wind. And you'd be surprised at how much solar and wind the state produces. And I will tell you that, like right now, GVEC has the most installed base of solar, rooftop solar, than any other place in the state.
Wow. On homes?
On homes.
How does that work? What do you mean? So like they're offering some sort of incentive for homeowners to put panels on their roof?
Well, we're not offering. I mean, there's incentives out there. That's not necessarily GVC. We just have the most of people. We have more people that are doing it, either through GVEC, because we do install solar, or they're doing it through another company, a third party company that's doing it. Mm-hmm. And the incentives are really the same. Sure. Either way. I mean, it's federal rebates.
What do you think of the biggest changes coming?
Well, I think the biggest changes is going to be in the type of technician that you're having. These guys are going to have to be even more educated, have a better understanding of electronics and software and data bus systems and stuff. So that's probably going to be the biggest change. And I always tell young kids is like, you want to be a mechanic. You don't want to be the guy doing brake jobs and pulling transmissions and stuff. You want to be the guy that's a troubleshooter that understands electricity, and understands electronics and understands software. So that's probably going to be the biggest change. I don't see a lot of changes happening from an actual shop perspective. You're still going to need lifts. You're still going to need equipment. Sure. You're still going to need a place to service. Some of that service, will you be able to do remotely? Yeah. We did experiment with some stuff that we were doing some tests with AAA where we were using telematics to, somebody was driving a car. If they had one of these units installed in their car and just plugged into the data port, and it would use their phone to transmit data. If they got a check engine light, it would immediately alert us that this customer with this car got a check engine light. We would look at the data, and then we could determine, hey, is it something, when could we fix that? What's the most probable cause of that? Is that something we can pre-order a part, get with a customer, let them know, hey, let's bring this car in, or hey, this isn't this is a minor problem. Sure, it's okay. Urgency. The light's on. It's not. There's not a sense of urgency, but we will have this part. And whether we did it at the shop or we did it mobile, where we went out to, because I always figure we have to figure out a way to be able to go where the customer is when they're not using a car. Because if you think about a car,
it's a needed thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you think about it, how often are they using it? It's usually sitting,
right.
Probably 60 to 70% of the time. So how do we provide that service and make it more convenient for the customer? The model's not there. I had a mobile business where we did that. It's very difficult to charge for windshield time and, traffic, and it's worse now is delays and stuff. But how are we going to build a model where we're able to do that and be able to service that car in a more timely fashion and in a fashion that's just most convenient for the customer? I think that's going to change. Is it going to be during my tenure?
That's a lot of software to write. I can see how you're over there just like, well, how do I get in front of it?
I don't know that I'll be the guy with the big idea, and then John will figure out how they're going to do it. John and David and Edgar.
You're going to have to get in front of this, guys.
You guys are going to have to figure this out, because they definitely, because that's really what it is. How do we do it? And then, the other thing is, do we really need those facilities could we not be back in a warehouse space where it's less expensive to have a building? It's and do we need high volume traffic in those facilities? And so that's definitely probably going to change some. Will our industry change? Yeah, our industry's going to change, but we're going to be here.
What's the best advice you can give to a car owner as far as making sure that whenever they have to come see you, they get the most value out of their dollar, right? So whether it be if they change their own oil, or if if there's some, what would you give? What would be the best advice you'd give to a car owner?
Routine maintenance. And when I say routine maintenance, these are things that weren't done before, because most cars, people would run them 100,000 miles, 125, and they're done with the car.
Right.
So they never service transmissions, because it's, transmission was going to last 125,000 without changing fluid or anything if you're driving it normally. Never change brake fluid, never change power steering fluid, because of those cars, they just didn't keep them that long. Well, now these cars are all capable of running 300, 400,000 miles. They're just much more efficient. And so those things have become more important. So we really look at, and people think it's a gimmick. Well, the owner's manual doesn't do that. Well, they want you to buy a new car.
Right.
They don't want you to keep that car forever. They want you to feel like you're missing out on something. So we tell people it's really about flushing transmissions, 30,000 miles, 50,000 miles, changing antifreeze, 100,000 or even 50,000, brake fluid, and that's even gotten more important, because with ABS and stuff, you have so many more valves, and, just the smallest little particle will screw up one of those valves, or if you've got, too high moisture content in it. And so we're saying those are the things. They're not expensive items to do, but those are the things that you really should be doing to keep that car running good for a long time. And I've done some spreadsheets on, hey, if you did all these routine maintenance at these mileages and do oil, we don't necessarily promote full synthetic all the time, because sometimes the full synthetic, the mileage intervals are too long. And that's where some of these car manufacturers have run into a lot of trouble, is because they're using these algorithms for mileage and stuff, and they're having trouble with oil building up, having trouble with carbon deposits. Volkswagen's notorious, is because the oil change intervals are too long. And so what happens is, and you don't see it as much now, is that they would produce this, hey, change your oil every 15,000 miles, or you wait till it tells you on your car. Well, the car's got the algorithm built into the computer and stuff. Well, nobody ever updated the computer. Mm-hmm. And so a car computer is no different than a desktop computer. There's updates issued every day. And so, maybe they saw that algorithm, we need to change that. That's not quite right. And they change it, but that person's car never gets software updated. That's changing now because they're pushing over the air updates and stuff. And so you've seen a lot of oil-related problems because of not changing it frequent enough. Mm-hmm. And so what we pretty much, our standard is what we pretty much promote is 7,500 miles. You can use a synthetic blend of oil, and then we use a BG additive, motor oil, MOA. We use it because if you start using that, we're a believer in their products, and they have a warehouse right here. Those products, when you start using it, I forgot what the mileage is before 30,000 or 20,000 on oil change. If you'll use their products and you have a oil related failure, could be transmission, could be engine, anywhere any of their products is used, they have an insurance policy that will pay up to a certain amount towards that replacement. And they're very good on their warranties because we've had them come in. It wasn't necessarily a car we were servicing, but it was somebody else was having it serviced, but they had all their paperwork and they had a failure, and we just call the rep and they come out, they look at it and say, yeah, fix it.
Wow.
Send us a bill.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've used those products for years, all my vehicles, motorcycles, ATVs, UTVs.
It's an additive?
It's additives. Yeah. They have all kinds of different additives and stuff. For fuel, for diesel, for, the one we use the most is motor oil. And then for injector clean process and stuff.
Wow. So change your fluids.
Change your fluids. That's the number one thing. I always tell people, change your fluids. Rotate tires.
That's another one of those things that's changed with over the years, right? So so like the last handful of trucks that I've ever had, they're usually lifted, and I usually have about 35.
They're Dodges. They don't usually last that long.
Oh, zing, zang. But this truck out here will probably be the first truck that I've had in 15 years, or actually, it looks like I'll probably have to buy tires.
You wore out a set of tires on?
Yeah.
I had that problem too.
So I'm like, and this is also probably one of the first, I think, the last two trucks that I've had, I started getting kind of notorious about making sure they get rotated, because the bigger the tires, the more random they wear sometimes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe it's a Dodge thing, but or a Ram thing. But yeah. So anyway, I've become more of a believer in rotating tires. People fear getting taken advantage of.
Right.
And you said a couple times a day, that y'all don't do any hard selling. You just present information.
That's our job. Our job is to present the information, make people aware of the service needs. And so we have a huge liability. If we see something we don't tell somebody, then something happens. They can come, well, you guys saw this.
Right.
And you didn't tell them. So that's what people don't understand sometimes, is that when we get a car in, we're going to do this thorough safety inspection, and it doesn't cost them anything. Some people get upset because we're doing that. Well, you're
looking for something to
You're looking for something to sell. No, our job is to present the needs of your vehicle. Mm-hmm. Our job is not to spend your money.
Right.
That's your job.
Right.
You get to decide. Now we will, we'll advise you on it. Mm-hmm. And, we'll tell you, hey, yeah, you do this, but you know what, you could probably wait. You know what, next time you have an oil change, just schedule some extra time. And then we can tell you what this is going to cost so they can budget for it.
Sure.
Anything else. The thing that I always tell people, that what we really don't like doing is we don't necessarily like fixing broken cars, because
I'll ask you about that.
The problem with fixing a broken car is that, number one, it's unscheduled. Mm-hmm. Number two, they're worried about how they're going to get Jimmy to baseball practice, Sarah to dance practice. And so it just creates, all this stress for the car owner. And then of course it's going to be $1 gazillion to fix my car, and I don't know how long it's going to be. And so we don't necessarily like fixing broken cars, because they're all unscheduled. Mm-hmm. And we try to schedule all of our work. But there's times we'll come in Monday, there's 10 cars in a parking lot that we didn't have scheduled. You know? And so now you're trying to, and we kind of have our rule of thumb is we want every car that comes in, we want it looked at within 2 hours.
Oof.
We want to have it looked at and have the problem identified within 2 hours, mm-hmm. because it's really about turnaround time. And when you got broken cars and you got 10 cars that weren't scheduled, and you have all this other work that was scheduled, well, those cars that were scheduled are going to take priority, but then we always have this need, like we need to figure out what's going on with that. So it's like, broken. We'd rather just maintain cars and do, change fluids and brakes and just do stuff that's scheduled.
Right. Well, it's more controlled that way, right?
It is.
You get into, you have a major catastrophic fail, right? And then if the goal is to fix that fail, and then it's like, well, you had all the other shit that led up to that, you know. Then once you fix that, then you got an unknown factor of what else. Yeah,
and that's probably the biggest challenge in our business, when you fix something that it may be masking another problem that you don't see until you actually fix the first problem. Then you find the second problem. And those are the phone calls you don't want to make to the customer. And, we try to avoid that, try to be very thorough through that. But the other thing about, scheduling repairs and stuff is that we have loaner cars, and so if you are in a position where you can schedule it, well, we have loaner cars that you can use. So you don't have to worry. It's convenient. There are cars,
sure,
that we loan out. They're supposed to be rental cars, but
yeah,
I don't know that we ever get paid for rental car, which is one of the things I'm, telling the guys. I'm like, hey, we're spending a ton of money on these cars and we're not charging for them. And, we just have to build it into our rates. And, so.
What's your favorite car of all time?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Porsche 911.
You have one?
Had one.
Oh, you don't have any more? The black one?
Sold it.
Well, how long did you sell it?
Probably 2 years ago.
Why'd you sell it?
This is what's interesting, Jason, as a business owner. When I had that car, when I drove that car, and I know I probably shouldn't worry about it.
Oh,
is
stigma?
that stigma.
God bless.
Is that stigma. I love driving that car. And what people didn't understand, they just figure, oh, that guy's got a black Porsche or whatever. It must be an ass or just got a bunch of money or something.
Wait,
I paid $5,000 for the car.
But what year was that car?
It's 2001.
Right. So
it had a blown motor, and I put a motor in it. Well, I didn't. The guys did.
Sure.
They put a motor in it and fixed it, and I drove it. I loved driving. It was just a very comfortable car. And plus I knew I don't have that much money in this car.
Yeah, right.
It's crazy. I like driving cheap stuff, as long as the air conditioning works, it's smooth and stuff. And,
but people saw it and associated,
yeah. So my wife has a new Corvette and I get pushback for that too. And I'm like, that's her dream car.
Yeah.
That's what she's always wanted. She's always driven, stuff that was wrecked, broke, or something I fixed, and she's never really complained.
Together,
and, that's just the car she always wanted. And I said, well, people don't realize that was the first new car I bought since like 1990. That everything else I bought was used or broke or whatever.
Got a deal on it. Yeah.
And so it was just something I wanted to do for her, for her present. She always wanted a convertible. And so that's what I did. And I catch flack for that too. And so I tell people it's kind of interesting that, they're always looking at what you're driving. And, if you're driving some old piece of junk, they think you're just a poor businessman. You're not making it. You're going to go out of business. But then if you drive something that's real expensive, then it's like, oh my, he must be ripping people off or, he's making so much money or whatever. I said, but the one thing that you can always drive and nobody ever questions.
An F-150.
F-150. You can always drive an F-150. And, those things cost just as much as any of those other expensive cars out there. Or you can drive a F-250, and they're $100,000.
Yeah.
And nobody will ever say a word about it. But you have a Porsche or a Mercedes or any of those nameplates, then it's just like, it's a stigma.
Wow.
That's
too bad.
Which is
So
bad.
Is that why you sold the car? You're tired of getting pushback on it?
Pretty much. I just got to where I wouldn't really drive it as much. But then I also had just too many cars, really.
Oh, yeah? What, you got a full garage now?
No, I've got rid of some stuff. I've just got stuff. I got a 65 Mustang. I had a 66 Mustang also. I got a 66 Fairlane convertible resto mod.
You're a Ford guy.
I just happened to be that. I've always had a Mustang. Mustang was my first car. And
F-150, Ford Lane, Fairlane.
Yeah, but I've had Chevrolets, GMCs. Had just, a little bit of Volkswagens.
So your favorite car of all time is something that you had and you were driving it daily. You had a daily
I do like driving that new Corvette of my wife's.
Yeah?
That car's they just really handle well driving. I don't even drive it. I drove, when I bought it, I got track time with it and I spent 2 days on the track, which was really fun. I really understood.
Is it the Z?
No, hers is a base model. Okay. She'll never floor that car. She'll never we picked it up at the museum and that guy spent 2 hours with her car. And I'm like, dude,
you're wasting your time, dude.
Well, I told him, hey, that's probably the best new car delivery. We just never had experience. And I said, but really you told her all that stuff, but there are three things that really all she needs to know is how to start the car, how to make the top go down and how to turn the radio on. She doesn't care about Z mode and all these programmable modes for performance and shock
Track
settings and track mode. She doesn't care about any of that because she'll never floor that car, and she doesn't. So I drive it every once in a while.
It's fun though, huh?
It's just comfortable.
Yeah.
It's a very comfortable car.
So you're a tall guy. What are you, 6'5", 6'4", 6'6"?
6'4".
And you don't have to fold your legs behind your ears
To get in there? No.
So
drove that car 1,100 miles back from the museum.
well, I figure once you get into it, it's like a cockpit.
Well, you learn to get in and out of those cars.
Yeah, so I tried getting in one. Wyatt's got a Z. What? He's got one of the Z
Z06.
Yeah, something like that, right? It's a beautiful car.
Yeah.
The mid motor and all the bells and all the stuff, and I can't. I took like 10 minutes to take pictures while I was in it, and I was like, all right, get me out. But yeah, there's definitely a
rotate your hips, rotate your legs.
So he was telling me he's a tall guy like myself, and he's really got hit hard with COVID. So he's not as mobile as he used to be, Wyatt. But he was telling me he told me here I seen him the other day, and he was like, "Hey, I figured out how to. There's a way to get in and out of the car." He's like, "You hit this button, and the steering wheel does this, and the seat does that, and it's a lot easier now to get in and out of it." And I was like, "Son of a bitch." Anyways, those are beautiful cars. So your favorite driving car is that Vet? Was your most favorite? This is the one you had the most fun driving?
The Porsche is the one I had the most fun driving.
Oh,
but I do enjoy driving.
You're just
that
saying you enjoy driving it, right? Well, right on. Is there anything that I didn't ask you? What's something that you were thinking that we were just going to talk about? I mean,
probably our rebranding. Our rebranding.
Well, let's talk about
what we're doing.
You got a minute? You can talk about it?
Yeah, got a minute. So we are in the process. So I created this brand probably 8 years ago, Total True Automotive, knowing that we were going to split those companies, the collision shop and stuff, and then knowing that we were probably going to expand out of shirts, and felt like, hey, it just, I couldn't go to New Braunfels and say Shirts Auto Service. I couldn't go to Seguin and say Shirts Auto Service, or go into San Antonio. And so, we just want to create this brand. And so I hired a company, spent a number of months on the project, just creating the brand, creating all the advertising and copy and stuff behind it, and all the trinkets and car wraps and everything. And so we did that. And then I just got scared, like, gosh, we've had this Shirts Auto Service brand. We got a good name. But do I really want to change it? And so then when we bought the store in New Braunfels, we rebranded that store as soon as we bought it, which, looking back, was probably a mistake, because the company that was there did not have a bad reputation. Mm-hmm. And so, but, in my mind, it's like, if we don't do it now, we're going to be in the same boat, and we're just not going to do it. I'm like, let's just bite the bullet. Let's go ahead and brand it as a Total True brand. And then we were just, we've always had brand confusion with Shirts Car Care and Shirts Auto Service. And, they've always got our name confused. They never really got our name right. People call it Shirts Automotive, Shirts whatever, And so we were getting brand confusion even within our own team. It's because, their paychecks come from Total True Automotive management. And then, we had Total True on some stuff, and we always had Shirts Auto Service powered by Total True Automotive, which was really the company that was kind of behind the scenes, and just felt like we need to do a better job. I don't want to have different brands. I want to have one website. I want to have one brand. I want to have, one system that we're using. I just want to be consistent throughout. And we had a team of COOs come through our shops a couple months ago, and they were doing SWOT analysis on our shops. And so,
what is that?
SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so they looked at our shops, and it's part of a group they were in. They looked at our shops and spent time. We give them access to everything, our data, everything, sales, tickets. They interview our staff. They had 4 people in each store, and they all had different assignments, and they talk to all of your staff and get feedback from your staff on just a variety of topics. And then you had data guys looking at all of our data. And then you had another 4 that just interviewed me and looked at, what I'm doing, what I do. They looked at me, and then they basically brought all that stuff together and delivered to our COO, which is John, and just beat them up. I felt sorry for him because he came back. I mean, but it was stuff we needed to hear. And some of that stuff was stuff I've been saying,
Sure.
but they don't necessarily want to listen to me all the time, and I don't want to get involved
Sure.
in it. I'm like, it's just not a hill I want to die on right now, that we'll get it figured out. And so, they had deliverables for us. They had probably 16 pages of stuff that they looked, some stuff was small, some stuff we didn't necessarily agree with because maybe they didn't know the backstory or whatever, but there was just great information.
Yeah, a lot of data.
And it's just like, hey guys, don't beat yourself up, because what you guys aren't hearing is all the compliments I got on our facilities and how we have Taj Mahals and how these guys are going to have to go back and they've got some work to do in their facilities because our facilities are just so clean and very well organized. We have a lot of SOPs. We just have a lot of stuff in place that most of the shops don't have in place. And that's all a testament to John and Edgar, his right-hand guy. But don't beat yourself up. These are the good things they said. Let's take this stuff. We're not going to make any rash decisions at this point. Let's just process this and let's come up with a plan. Well, part of one of those things was brand confusion within our own people. And so I said, okay, because our some shirts still said Shirts Auto Service, some said Total True Automotive, some of our advertising stuff. And so that's just been something I'm working on now and it is a lot of work. Trademarking the name, that's a 2-year process.
Wow.
Through the U.S. Now, doing it through the states, not near as much, but it's only for the state. So, but I was doing it from a federal standpoint, and that's probably something maybe I just didn't have the best information, or maybe I didn't understand it all, but I had started the process through the trademark office and said, well, I'm going to go through with it and get it trademarked. Because when I looked at private equity and what they look for is they look at, is your name trademarked? Are you in 3 market service areas? They look at all this stuff. And so I've taken that kind of their playbook and said, well, we're building this for value. I don't necessarily have any plans on selling at this point because I don't think it's the right thing to do for staff unless there's just some great opportunity created for them. Then maybe I would look at it, but feel like, hey, these guys have worked very hard. We just got to continue down this road unless there's an opportunity that's going to create better opportunity for staff. I don't need to do it anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't need to do it.
You got a 5-year exit anyway. You're like,
I still have real estate I've got to pay for. So, so we still have that part of the business too. So, but yeah, so we're working on the rebranding and trying to get that messaging out there. Like yesterday, the company we use changed all our Facebook pages. Well, I wasn't aware they were doing that yet. And so, I get a message for John. He's on vacation, sending me, hey, could you reply to this Facebook post where someone was just asking, are we the same people? And I'm like, well, it took me a while to find the post. I'm like, where is he getting this from? And I finally find it. And then, I have some messaging that I did that just talks about our name and how Total True Automotive is more indicative of what we do and about being true to our customers, true to our staff, and true to our families and true to our vendors. And it's about treating everybody, not necessarily as equals, but treating everybody how they want to be treated. And so it was really about putting that messaging out there. Well, it wasn't really, that's just another thing on my list of things to do that day that I didn't have on my schedule, to go through and then put that messaging on all of the Facebook pages that we have. And then, it's a little early to do that. Yeah. So then I'd change the messaging for that because it is a little early, but it's like, hey, they changed it.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Not new owners.
Yeah. And that's really what it was is that, but it's interesting because some of the comments we got back is that, that name is more indicative of who you guys really are and your values. And so, that was good. That has been the fear is that people are going to think that
now I got to find a new mechanic. Now
we sold. Oh my gosh. Now these guys are, it's somebody different. It's not the same people. And, and that's not the case. It's the same people, same everything. And
the response to mergers and buyouts are, they're different across the board, but it's such an interesting problem to have. How are people going to, so whenever we sold a big chunk of Acme to, another company that was, you could call them a competitor, but I mean, the truth was the matter was that at the time we did a lot of work together and nobody knew that, and then so it did work out long term, but that initial, letting everybody know this is what's happening, this is what we're doing, it was interesting to see the response that we got from that, because at the end of the day, at least the experience that I've had is that, people want to do business with you, and then so and I'm, that was a big challenge for me because, most of my businesses have always been structured around the internet, like I've my biggest customers throughout most of my career, I never met face to face, and so I was like, yeah, well, this printing business, this printing gig, no problem. It's just business. Let's do this, and then it was such a different dynamic for me. And then, it's like, you got to spend the time to talk with the people that want to do business with you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that was, it was a challenge, you know what I mean? Because I'm always really strapped for time, at least I, used to be. So, yeah, just the response that people have whenever there's something different happening is an interesting challenge. That's good though. It sounds, for the most part, I know it's been really stressful for you, but it sounds like it hasn't been that too big of a deal. In terms of your customers, that is,
Not yet.
Not yet.
They haven't seen signs go up yet. So
still the same, but different. Same owners. Man, I could talk to you all day. We've been here for 3 hours though. So, good luck on that. And, is there anything else that you want to say? The Total True Automotive is going to be, so you'll have the signs up this year, you think?
Yeah, we should have the signs up. It'd probably be, they're telling me probably 6 weeks for cabinets.
Okay.
So tell them, hey, soon as, you don't have to do them all at once. Soon as one's ready, go put it up. The street signs are easy because it's just replace stuff in it, but we don't have a cabinet at 3009, and then 1103, we don't have a cabinet there. So we were just putting a regular cabinet, not fancy letters with just, a face on it, make it easy and stuff. So that should be pretty easy for them to do.
Right on. Mark, thank you again. I really appreciate you coming down.
All right, man. Well, thank you for having me. Enjoyed it. It's been good. This went by pretty quick.
Yep.